Hi, my name is Stephanie John, licensed therapist, and this is Reflect and Rewind. This is a place where we slow down and explore our favorite comfort shows from a therapist's perspective. We talk about what's underneath the storyline, the connection, the relationships, the patterns, and the parts that just feel just a little bit too real. So get comfy, take a breath, and let's reflect and rewind. Okay, so we jump right into this episode with Mary Jane going to see Andre at this hotel. Andre lets us know that they've been in this hotel a few times and all the little rendezvous that they have had. The thing is, well, the questions I have is this. One, why did Mary Jane go to this house? Why did she go to him knowing that she was married? She said she didn't want, one of the rules for herself was to not be in a relationship with a married person. And now that she found out, she still is finding herself like chasing after this man, right? So what is it that is making her hopeful for this relationship to work out? Where's the hope? Where's the line? Now, last episode, we saw him doing the sweet nothings and your stuff is my password and yada, yada, yada. But then she goes back to his hotel, tries to tell him that this is in love, right? Like verbally out of her mouth, and yet physically is still finding herself in this hopeful, romantic kind of place. So there is a cognitive dissonance that's happening. She's saying one thing and then she's doing something else, which is very mixed messaging. I think Mary Jane knows what's right, but doesn't know how to actually do it. So Andre gives her this ring. He tells her that she loves her, and then that he's willing to almost sacrifice his marriage and all the things to be with this woman, and then had the nerve to bring God into it.
But you're hard to pray away. Two words kept coming to me: suffering and surrender. We're not put on this earth to suffer, so we need to surrender. So if you would have me
into it, we might as well bring God into it, right? If Jesus Christ himself suffered and put himself on the line for us as his people, then who are we not to have some level of suffering, some level of burden, right? And there's nothing biblical about this relationship, about his level of dishonesty. Fine, you don't want to stay married to your wife. That's cool. That's cool. The issue is that you were not honest about it. And then even in this conversation, we had the audacity to now tell Mary Jane as she's walking out, oh, I have to tell my wife something. Then tell her wife what you got to tell her. Because now it seems like he's only going to leave his wife or put his marriage on the line if Mary Jane gives him the answer that he's looking for. That makes it worth it, which speaks to me that he doesn't actually know what he wants. I don't know if he's even ever really tried to fix the things that are broken in his marriage, and he's looking at Mary Jane more as an escape from his realities. And we see more of that when we get into the Avery Andre segment, right? But I don't know if they ever had the conversation. And Mary Jane is not his scapegoat, once again, using these women as a scapegoat for him to deal with his actual stuff. So the question is for you guys, have you guys been Mary Jane in this situation, longing for someone to choose you, putting yourself in situations that you know mentally are wrong, verbally have said it out your mouth, and still physically make the opposite choices? Are you Andre? Are you allowing other people to make decisions for you, knowing that you need to ultimately make the decision for yourself as to whatever it is? He wants to leave his wife, then he just needs to leave her, regardless if he gets the prize or not, if that's what he said he wanted. It's just a fact. To put that on her is unfair. The fact that Mary Jane told the wife puts him once again off the hook. These women are having their own conversations, and he's just like there, even though he's a catapult. That's how we even got here. You know, very unfair. Very unfair. And what do y'all think about this ring? Do you say yes to a man that has proposed to you while he's married to someone else? What is that about? He now mails the ring to her. Harassment? Harassment much? He goes to the point where now he mails the ring to her. Fine. And there seems like a moment where Mary Jane feels like she's stuck between a rock and a hard place. And throughout the whole episode, you see these little moments of surrendering, suffering. Like this moment with Andre that she's having is echoing back to her. Moments with her dad, which we'll get to. Moments on the radio, whatever, that's just playing back this life and the decision that she has to make, like almost like little signs, right? Like, is this man the right one? Are these underneath the right circumstances? But can you truly accept something that doesn't belong to you? He's someone else's. He hasn't even filed for divorce, you know? And yes, he's saying his kids, his kids, his kids, his kids, and we know that, you know, if he's a good dad and that's the thing that he prides himself on, he is going to stand in that firmly. But then who does that make him as a partner? Because just because Mary Jane will may now choose you and you're not with Avery anymore, your kids now, if they come first, will still be a hindrance into these relationships. They'll still have say. Avery can still pull the no, but, oh, they're sick, come over. And then where does that really leave your wife? These are the questions I have. If they were my couple, these are the questions I would have as to, like, okay, fine, but you look like you're struggling with making decisions well within yourself. So then what does this look like when these women are used against you? These kids are used against you while you're in this relationship with this woman. When one of them is sick and you're jumping at their beck and call, or when you guys have children together, then who kid takes right? I don't know the answer to the question, but what I am saying is you just choosing Mary Jane isn't the escape you think it is. It's just going to add a certain level of complexities. So then we really need to get down to the root of things as to Mary Jane being honest with herself, right? Allowing what she's thinking and what she's saying to match up with her actual actions. And then with Andre, for him to start to make decisions within himself and not using people around him as the catapult or the excuse or the scapegoat for something. If you want something, then just go after the thing and stand in your decision. You want to leave your wife, leave them. You want to fight for your kids, fight for them. You want to work it out with your wife, work it out for your wife. And if you may lose it all, you got to be okay with that too, because you cannot control other people. You have to be comfortable with the decision that you made because you thought that was the best decision for you, ultimately, regardless of what the other people may think. And thinking about it, what happens if the kids don't want to be with you because you're the one who broke up this family? Have you thought about that? You're fighting for these kids. And then what if you turn into the villain in their story and they don't want to be around you no more? Then what happens? And this is why it's important to make your own decisions for you. Because you won't have to answer to somebody, because we can end up hurting somebody along the way. And we got to be comfortable with that. We don't get to make that choice to be the good guy all the time and make the decisions that benefit us. We don't get to do that. So, that's Andre. Okay, so then we can get into dad. So next, Mary Jane goes in to see her dad and Niecy to bring her to the doctor's appointment. Gonna find out Niecy is waiting for the father of her child that she's pregnant with to drop her off to the doctor's appointment. She's being kind of rude to Mary Jane, but I do want to highlight this part. Niecy's baby father ends up not even coming. The father had to make it clear, like, hey, I don't think he's coming. And in that, Niecy was still very hopeful that he will show up and I guess be the man that she knows him to be or that she's yearning for. We haven't gotten to that part of the show yet, so I'm not gonna, but there is this yearning. And what I've noticed is, and I could be wrong in my vision, but Niecy and Mary Jane to me look like very similar women. Two women who are looking for men to be something that they haven't shown themselves to be, in hopes that they can get this love that they both are hoping for whatever the reasons why there's this gap, right? Niecy is having multiple children, and Mary Jane's burying herself in work, and somewhere in there when they both meet men and now are expecting these men to kind of fulfill this love role or whatever the narrative is, they're just failing. And they're both very hopeful, or secretly hopeful in Mary Jane's case, that they will figure it out. So those two characters actually to me are more similar than they are different. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how further that goes for Nisi's story. And if these women ever even find truly the love of their lives, like a love that they're looking for, even if that love means themselves. Now, Dad, on the other hand, Dad mentions that he has this car that he's rode Mom around in, and he hasn't been able to marry. He wants to, right? But I guess because Mom's been so sick, it's just been really, really hard, it looks like, to get her out, to feel like her young self and just do the thing. So then he opts to take Mary Jane out on a daddy-daughter date. So he ends up taking them on a daddy-daughter date, and it's in this point where the echoing back to that moment of engagement that happened to Mary Jane comes back in. And he says to her,
You know what? I can't wait for the guy who wants to marry you to call me up and ask for your hand in marriage. I'm going to give him such a hard time.
So you really think it would be that traditional?
It better. You are my little girl, and you deserve the best.
you can see her mind, you know, and noticing that the man that proposed to her, and I wonder if that's really her first proposal too, but the man that proposed to her actually didn't do any of those traditional things, and that it is important to for her father. And to be honest, her father seems like an upstand, like a man of respect, a man that has provided for the family and is steady for the family, and that I would say a love that she's looking for. Right? I could be wrong, but it looks like this is a love that she's looking for. So she's had a good role model of a man, and just bad pickings or bad habits. I don't know. So with her having this thing, this guide, and then the guide is saying like this, and the right guy for you would move this particular way. Now I think has the question for Mary Jane, like, if this guy even it, and then how would she even introduce this guy to her family? Like, how would that truly integrate itself? And it does seem like her dad's weight does mean a lot to her. So then we also see a moment that she has with Mom a little bit later. And Mom brings up such a good point of how lupus, which now we find out she has lupus, has ravished her body, ravished her sense of self. And she doesn't feel, at least what I got was like a certain feel of like femininity and sexy, and feels worthy or capable of spending time with their dad in a romantic sense. Like, this disease has made her so scared to live still, or have a space to be soft, because I could be wrong, but it sounds like for almost like a space of survival, just trying to survive this sickness. And isn't that interesting, right? Like, things can happen to us and we don't even know who we are. And I think she shows this really well when she's reflecting back on this card.
How he'd love to see my legs pour out of that Porsche of his. It's not the ride he loves. It's all the stops he made just to see me get out of his car.
And how she just doesn't feel like that anymore, and that the car ride can kill her. And she just reminisce on that time so fondly that it's very interesting when she describes of how she just feels, or just even watching her cough, and just how this sickness has changed a sense of how she feels in her own body. And then if you don't feel sexy within yourself, how are you possibly going to show up in any other relationship in that way? It would be nearly impossible, you know? And I wonder, for anyone out there, have you ever felt that way? And I'm thinking an accident could have happened, sudden illness, postpartum does that a lot, or losing or gaining a significant amount of weight. Have you ever felt, while being in partnership with a person, felt so out of touch with yourself and just trying to reconcile life within yourself that it did end up being really hard for you to show up in romantic relationships as sexy or feminine or masculine if you're a guy, right? Like, Has that ever happened to you? And how did you get back to becoming or feeling more like yourself? How long did it take you from the incident to the present day of feeling like yourself? And if you do have any tips, I would love for you to put that down in the comments for just other people to hear and read about, on how to get there. Or or if you never got there, put that down too, right? Because this is how we learn. The community safe space I am trying to create, where we can discuss things that has worked and the things that haven't, to at least know that we're not alone in it, right? So yeah, put that down in the comments. God, about this part with the dad. Now the dad had a girl walking around trying to flirt with him.
So how's Helen?
Well, she's not doing too well.
Well, look, I should have been over to see her long ago. But if you'll have me, I'd love to come by and see her.
Fine, drop by anytime.
House still the same?
Still the same.
Well then.
Herself. 2, this woman ends up coming around dad, flirting with the dad at the dinner. And then fast forward when we get to the scene with mom, later on in this episode, the girl comes to the house, and mom makes a good point of just like, sometimes these women usually wait to after someone done died before they decide to kind of like come in and make their presence known. So I do think this show does a really good job. Of showing love in various ages. So we have Niecy, who's like young, then we have Mary Jane, who's like 30, and then we have these parents, the older parents, that have their own love story that's happening, right? Like this coupleship that is strong. However, there are fragile points of it from what we know, is just due to the sickness of mom and how that's showing up, and how her sickness, other women are finding that to be an opportunity to come in and potentially stake their claim, and wishing ill on them or on her potentially, so they can get with dad, this stable man, this good man. So I guess we'll see more how that unfolds, but I do find it interesting as to how our love lives don't stop just because we get older, that we may still have to be a certain level of vigilant in our romantic relationships, because to some extent, by mom being so overwhelmed in her sickness, how often does dad actually ever get to feel loved back? Right? Like, two things can be true. Like, this woman can be very overtaken by her sickness and is just trying to figure out herself, or is she trying to figure out herself? And then for him, how does he receive love in return? Like, I often think about maybe another fragile time is when people do decide to have kids, or maybe like a major injury where one person could be so stuck in their world, rightfully so, and the things that are happening to them, that sometimes we forget our partners, and trying to have balance to where we can also show up for them, and that's complicated. And it's not always like fair, and it's not always even, but I do think it's one of those points where it's just like, when people say like, oh, communication is just so important, this is why, right? Like, I don't know if there's room in their relationship to talk about dad's struggles and dad's burdens because of how big this how much space this lupus takes up in this family, let alone their romantic relationship. I don't know. So we'll see. But I did want to make that a point, because if I remember correctly, this lady keep on coming up. I do want to get into Avery's story with Andre. So we finally get a scene where they're together and they're having this conversation. And I'm just going to put a couple of clips in here so y'all can see what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. Jill.
She found out her husband was cheating on her. And here's the kicker. She's not leaving him.
So what we do see is that Avery brings up this story about her friend who finds out that her husband is cheating and decides to put up this prenup. I'm not sure if this is the first conversation they ever had, or But I do think you get an idea that this is maybe one of the first conversations that they had. And in it, you get Avery, who is now proposing to him, a post-nub. And I think she does this post-nubs in hopes that he will sign it and saying that he doesn't want to lose the kids, because that was one of her bigger points of just like, okay, if you ever was to cheat again, then I will get full custody of the kids. And I think she understands that that's his pain point. The issue I have with the post-nub personally is, do you want him to stay out of fear, or do you want him to stay so that because you are chosen? I don't know what that seemed and what that was for her, but that's a question that as a therapist came in my mind, that if they were my client, I would have asked that. Like, okay, what's the point of the post-nub? And if he was to sign it, and then what? Right? Like, it doesn't let go of maybe the possible doubts she may be having, or the type of security she thinks it may bring. I think he's there, sure, but like, to what degree? I don't think it does. I don't think it solves everything that she would have hoped for. But either way, he don't even sign a thing. He doesn't even sign it. And to her, it means that he is actually in love with Mary Jane. But it does sound like this is the first time I'm actually having a real conversation. And one of the things that Andre does bring up is sex not being a part of their relationship anymore, right? She expresses that sex is important to him. He feels like they haven't had it, which to me feels like he hasn't been desired. So even when I think about the episode before, when Avery asks Mary Jane about sex and what does he do and how does he do it and everything, it did put a little in my brain of just like, okay, maybe there is some level of connectivity that she can also note for herself of the last time she's been intimate with her partner as well. And it seems like that has died down. And to be fair, they do have kids, and she does bring up all the various reasons to why it could have been difficult. And for her, she's like, well, we have had sex, is that not enough? And he's like, no. Like, ultimately, I want you to enjoy it, and I also want you to desire me. Sex, the act, it's not enough. And I often hear couples say that too. In my sessions, for couples who do struggle with intimacy, that the act isn't enough, and then somewhere along the line it does get very one-sided for various reasons. I've also seen it in the reverse in the case of gender. So to be clear, it's not just always women not feeling up to it and men having to like egg them on, right? That's not completely true. And then she mentions
In return. So you're the real winner in all of this. Because if we got divorced, then you'd have her. Did you ever stop to think about me? Who I'd get? Who is going to want me with 2 kids and a stomach full of stretch marks?
Lower your voice.
the idea of her feeling like she built him up. And if they were to get to divorce, that ultimately she's the one who loses out, because she's the one who's had the baby. She's the one who's had certain burdens, especially when it comes to having children, as to like, who's going to want me, And you get to now be the prize after I kind of built you up to be this successful man and all the things. So now you are more desirable while I'm like washed up. And somewhere they end up sleeping together, reconnecting. It looked like she was into it, like it allowed a certain level of zest back into their marriage. And maybe because there was a certain level of honesty that actually finally got to be had, the hard conversations were actually starting to be able to unravel itself, which did allow them to feel closer to each other. And this is why for couples who are anti-conflict, don't really ever get to the root of anything, right? Because conflict in itself isn't bad. Conflict and repair together is a beautiful thing, and oftentimes conflict is what gets us to emotional intimacy, which often then lends us to physical intimacy for a lot of people. So it looks like that is what kind of happened here with their relationship. In the midst of it all, it is interesting that Mary Jane was also texting. Avery called it out like, oh, you're going to go to your whore, And he didn't. It didn't even look like he replied to her. And I wonder if for Avery, him not replying or him not deciding to leave was a sign that he was also choosing her. I don't know. I don't know, but I wonder if that could be true for her, which could have also an additional lended herself to want to be intimate with this man after he's been caught cheating. I don't know. And I wonder, what can Andre do for her that would lend itself to show her that he's willing to stay and fight for the marriage because he wants her back and not he's staying just for the kids. I don't know. But I do wonder what that would be. Like, that's a question I think I would have asked if they were my client. Like, what is it that he could do? Like, yeah, he could sign a prenup, but we already discussed that, right? Like, is there other things that this man could do to show that he's willing to turn this thing around? You know? And after having this discussion, is there things that is making Andre second guess his decision with Mary Jane? I don't know. But for a nice big chunk of this episode, we are now in our little girls' night with Mary Jane and her girls, and they're all at this round table, and we end up having a few discussions. I feel like I want to get their name, but we're just gonna run with it. So we have Mary Jane, who, okay, so we have one friend, I can't remember her name, but she's the one, I think her hair was like straight. She sold Mary Jane's job back in the day. If I find her name, I'll insert clip here. I'll insert the clip and y'all see her. So yeah, so we have her, and she mentions this idea that she gets proposed to. The ring that she gets from her proposal she doesn't like, and she takes it upon herself to get the ring that she wants, and she thinks it's affecting her marriage because she demasculated her husband, fiance. And I've seen this so many times, right? Like, from women who are independent, who want what they want, that want the story tale, that story, fairy tale that they want, that they put it for themselves, may override the stories that their partners are also trying to put into their lives. Why does this happen? Because oftentimes, a lot of people, we have our own stories, the narratives that we tell ourselves. And when we finally do get with someone else, we forget oftentimes that to be married is to now co-author a storybook together within one vision. And that requires someone else's input. And that requires a certain level of submission. I know we don't like those words, but submission, to allow someone into your space that you chose. So to some extent, we're saying that this person is safe for them to insert and also share it. If she wanted a ring upgrade, she could have got one later, but did she need one right now? And when we don't allow ourselves to co-write a book together with our partners, then what happens? I would dare say you get things like this. You get a certain level of doubt that happens into a marriage, and she's starting off her marriage that way. The advice that Mary Jane gives is for her to just tell her partner just what she said and how it is impacting her. And honestly, I think that was great advice. To allow her to be apologetic and just see. And she may even have to get back that ring and take the ring that was given to her, right? To a sign of good faith, you know? But I want to know from you guys in the comments, like, what would you have done, right? Like, in that situation, would you have called your partner? Do you feel like, would you have called your partner and told them that you're sorry? Would you have given the ring that you bought from yourself back and keep the ring that they gave you? Would you, if you didn't like your ring, would you have done the same thing she did? Like, what would that have looked like for you, you know? And then, do you think that something like this should affect someone's marriage? What do you think the implications are, if any, you know? And then we have the other friend, this one right here, who finds herself dating a married man and calling herself a modern day geisha.
Oh, so you're a homewrecker. You actually celebrate the destruction of families.
Actually, quite the opposite. I believe I'm saving his marriage.
Really?
Mm-hmm. See, I'm not so much as the other woman as I am more of a, how do you say, modern day geisha.
How does that work exactly? How does that work? because there's a level of dishonesty. Now, this is the thing. If you want to be poly, you want to have an open relationship and define that however you want, that's your business. I think as a therapist, my biggest thing is the dishonesty. If you're not being honest with your wife, right, the person that you're supposed to have a certain level of intimacy with, and you're allowing that intimacy to be with someone else, that truth factor, that's the problem. Everything else, none of my business. But as your therapist, honesty, you got to give these ladies a choice. And the fact that you're being dishonest and that this woman is willing for this man to be dishonest and seeing this as a good service is a little problematic, if I was to say. But that's just me. But I would heavily always suggest that, listen, if you want to do what you do, do it. But if we're going to do it, this is when communication and honesty is going to happen, because then you can't be Andre now trying to gain control of these situations and scared to lose people and stuff later because you were dishonest. Like, just be honest, and then we won't run into issues. Okay? And where Mary Jane and her crazy self decides to take this sperm that she took from David out and put it on the table. Mary Jane, you okay? Are you okay? So she puts the sperm out on the table, and essentially she wants a baby. She wants a baby, and once again, that clock is ticking. That baby clock is ticking for her. She wants something. So much so, once again, being dishonest and essentially taking this man's sperm and trying to take matters into her own hands. It's not an oopsie daisy. She didn't even ask, right? He doesn't even know what his sperms are going to be used for. And her friend calls her out for it. Like, are we that out of touch with each other to where you couldn't come to me? And I would dare say, Lisa, how is she gonna come to you? We just had a whole incident, episode 2. I know it was short of a clip, right? But when between that and this was I supposed to say, hey, I took David's sperm the other night? I do think Mary Jane's being very dishonest. Once again, I think this is an issue of her thoughts and actions not really being on the same complete page. I don't know. But this is episode 3 of being Mary Jane. The episodes are picking up. We're getting there, And what should be our closing thoughts? I'm thinking for this week, in our comment section, we could talk about, have we ever been in a relationship where we were participating in the relationship knowing we should have been out? And underneath what circumstances were we staying in? Like, what made us stay with this man and or woman longer than need be? What was going on? What was going on with us? Is it something that they were giving us? Was it food, shelter, water? Was it the sex? I don't know. But what was it that was allowing ourselves to stay in situations that we knew we should have been left? And if we had a good friend, they would have told us, run, get out. You don't make no sense right now. But yeah, so that's it for today, you guys. I'll see you for episode 4.